So Boruto's future has changed once again. Sarada is now in the hands of the Ten Tails. Amato is now able to access the visions of prescience, apparently, and Momoshiki has returned. Yes, it appears that the deal Boruto signed with Momoshiki has come to fruition, and he will gain control of Boruto's body in the distant future. That is what we're heading towards at this point in time. So there's a lot happening, which means there's a lot to discuss, but of course, let's start from the top. So the chapter opens to a conversation Amato had with Kawaki prior to the events of the last 2 pages of chapter 35. So Kawaki goes on to clarify with Amato if he wants him to kidnap Kashin Koji. And Amato says, yes, that is what I want you to do. And of course, Kawaki, being the 300 IQ person that he is, asks a very important question. Will this interfere with taking down the Shinju? And Amato goes on to say, no need to worry, because he wants a world to still be there for KB to inhabit when she does come back to life. So obviously, he would want to get rid of the Shinju. But also, Kawaki already told him that he's not going to place the Karma Seal on Akebi until after the Shinju are dealt with. So it's obviously in Amato's best interest to get rid of them as soon as possible. But yeah, Kawaki goes on to confirm that Boruto is inside the village because he can sense his Otsutsuki presence. And Amato goes on to say that this of course is the best time to attack Koji since Boruto isn't there to defend him, and also before he gets a new update from Prescience. We then skip back to present time and it shows Koji underground unconscious, which is what happened in the prior chapter. Now some time then passes and Koji then wakes up on the infamous table inside Amato's lab. He also can't do anything to escape because he's not just strapped to the table, but he also has the jutsu ceiling cuffs on, which means he can't perform any type of jutsu or even mold his chakra to enhance his physical strength to burst through the table, as seen with Boruto being table level back in chapter 14. Now, Amato then goes on to kick up some casual convo saying that he's somewhat surprised that Koji survived the battle versus Ishiki Otsutsuki, and also hopes that he doesn't resent him because he sent him on that mission to pretty much die. But Koji goes on to say that he doesn't resent him because he went into that mission with that possibility in mind, as would anyone. Your life is obviously not guaranteed. So Amato then moves on to what this topic of conversation is about, and he brings up the 10 paths. But yeah, Amato goes on to say that he learned about prescience during the battle with Mamushi for the first time, and that is when he thought of this plan. And by the way, he also knew back then, because he overheard it, that Koji's last update was over 4 days ago. So that all factors into the current plan. And he also goes on to point out that there's a massive vulnerability in 10 paths, which is that it takes a very long time to get a new update. It could take 4 days, a week, a month, who knows? Koji doesn't know, and a lot can happen in between that time. Which is why I've always said that presence is not that reliable, because when you're messing with the future, literally going outside and taking the left instead of the right the very next second after seeing the future can change the future. So when you're taking 4 days to get a new update and it just comes in randomly, you have no idea what path you're on from the moment you first saw those visions. Now of course Amato has a fix for this, because Amato has a fix for everything, obviously, and this time he was able to accomplish this by tampering with the brainwaves of Kashin Koji. According to Amato, which is something he said can be verified by contacting Ada, he used an ultrasound-based procedure to shorten the time frame in between updates for prescience. In other words, Koji's brain has simply become more active than it was before, which I'm sure is not gonna lead to any sort of side effect. Of course not. And Amato tries to pass this off as him trying to help Koji out of the goodness of his heart, and he kinda hints back to the title of the chapter, but we all know what's going on here, and Koji also knows, he knows Amato. And Amato goes on to let the cat out of the bag as well, which was pretty weird because you're being so obvious right now. Because of course he goes on to show Kashin Koji, the clone of his daughter Akebi, waiting for the karma seal of the Kawaki. And he once again goes on to explain the plan of Kawaki inserting the karma after the Shinju are defeated, and she can reincarnate using the method of the Otsutsuki because the karma seal has the power of hope. So yeah, that is the plan, and Koji now knows it. Though the chapter also implies that Koji already knew, and even if we ignore what I'm going to say, I mean, obviously he would know. He's able to see multiple futures. He must have seen the convo between Amato and Kawaki before this. But also, this panel shows Akebi getting the karma seal. And I mentioned this in the spoiler review, we've never seen this happen before. I don't know if you guys can remind me because sometimes I do forget, but they're showing Kawaki on screen giving the karma seal to Akebi, which to me implies that Koji has seen a future where this does happen, because typically when Amato goes on to re-explain this plan over and over again, they never show a visual representation of this. They usually just tell us and then show Akebi sitting in the pod. But this time, when Koji's there and he's looking at Akebi, we're seeing images of this procedure. Why? And this gets even more interesting because Amato goes on to ask the very obvious question that he was going to pose to Koji, which is that if he saw a future where Kawaki placed his karma seal onto Akebi, and Kashin Koji blatantly says no. He outright says he has never seen it even once, and he has a memory of every future he has ever seen, and this one thing has never happened. But I think that is a lie. Because again, typically when going over this entire plan, they never show images of this. They've only done this once, and it's with Kashin Koji, the person known to see images of the future. And there's also the fact that they did this once before with Kashin Koji when he saw the visions of Ada and Himawari dying in the village. Those are visions he saw, and when referencing those events, those were shown on screen. And I think that's the same thing that's happening here. Now, why would Koji lie to Amato about this? What significance does it have to the plot, and does this lead to anything big? I have no idea. I just found that very strange. Though it also goes on to say that in every future, Jura appears without fail, and he almost always kills Kawaki, and that's important because he says almost always, not always, which means Kawaki does survive, and it could be that in one of those timelines where he does survive, or the one and only timeline where he does survive, he goes on to resurrect Akebi. You know, it's very simple. Makes sense. But Yamato goes on to free Koji and tells him he can leave, and he also says something very interesting. He goes on to tell him that he's looking forward to the next update to see what future or current reality has created. And this then leads to what happens later on. We're gonna come full circle here because Koji goes back to the base and Boruto's there. He kind of panicked before because, you know, he was wondering what's happening, where's Koji? But Koji appeared at the exact moment Boruto started to panic, so things worked out pretty well. Koji of course reached out to Ada expeditiously to try to figure out what's going on. What did Amato do to him in the past hour? But before Ada could even do anything, an update came in. And Koji then kind of fumbles because he was standing up, and what's interesting here is that when the update came in, it showed a panel of Amato, and he's kinda hunched over and sitting down, and it showed another close-up of Amato once again. But why? Why is the focus on Amato when Koji gets an update from Prescience? What exactly is going on? What's the connection here? Well, the obvious connection is what was said by Amato earlier in the chapter, which I found interesting. He said, "I'm looking forward to the next update to see what future or current reality has created." Now, why would Amato be looking forward to the next update? Is he expecting Koji to tell him what he sees? Obviously not. So why would he be looking forward to it? Well, maybe because he can see it himself. Maybe he did some changes to Kashin Koji's brainwaves, or maybe connected them somehow, and maybe he can see what Koji can see, which isn't the craziest thing ever. I mean, he's able to see through Kawaki's eye, and we have no idea how he does that. It could be just a video camera inserted into his eyeball, or maybe it's something connected to the brain that allows whatever images are transmitted to the brain to be transmitted to Amato's brain. We have no idea. So it could be the case that Amato can see all the futures that Koji is able to see. And maybe that does also take a toll on his body, which is why he's kinda hunched over in that panel. So I think this is actually good writing here from Mikimoto. I really love this. But yeah, Koji goes on to see multiple futures. We have one that shows Hidori reaching out to Sarada to take her eyes. There's one with Boruto seemingly being damaged and turning into Momoshiki slowly on panel. We have one with Sumire, one with the Claw Grimes, one with Sarada, one with Jura. We also have another one with Shikamaru and Jura apparently having tea or juice. I don't know. There's also Kobu, that idiot, and we're gonna get to Kobu later on. But of course, I know the one you guys really care about is the one with Momoshiki in all his glory. And what's interesting here is that he has his entire horn. And as we know, that was broken off by Boruto way back in chapter 53, I believe, and it has never grown an inch since. Though I will say that we might have jumped the gun a bit there, because the time that passed between when Boruto broke the horn and then when he showed back up again versus Code wasn't that long. And of course, a 3-year time skip is way longer than that, so you could assume that the horn simply grew over those 3 years. Now while this is happening, Sarada is walking through the village and she decides to go into this small lane where no one can see her because she's trying to get Code to attack her, and he's kind of a coward, so he's not going to come out into the open. So she walks into the small alley and Code pops up immediately, of course, and tries to nab her. Now she doesn't fight back, obviously. She wants to get captured and she starts to get pushed into the car mark, but for some reason Code all of a sudden senses Boruto's chakra on her person, and he then goes on to use chakra telekinesis to pull the pins from Sarada's clothing, and pretty much deduces that Boruto was going to use these pins to track Sarada and then teleport to the Shinju hideout to attack the Shinju. So he was pretty on the ball with that, which is very uncharacteristic of Code to be so smart. But everyone is getting a power-up or enhancement these days, so why not? Now of course, Code, now being 500 IQ, decides to toss the ornaments away and push Sarada into the claw mark, and she gets swallowed up even though she does activate the Mangekyo. It seems like it was way too late. Now as this is going on, Koji tells Boruto that he should listen calmly and carefully to what he has to say. The decoy plan with Sarada will fail. And as he says this, Boruto instantly teleports using FTG to Sarada, but of course, he's too late. Sarada is gone and she's now in the clutches of the enemy. All because Boruto did not kill Code, as I said he should have done. Though to be fair to Boruto, the plan was a good one if it did work out, but it didn't, so I get to call it a bad plan. Okay, that's how that works. Now there's also an entire convo between Kobu and the elders where he goes on to tell them that he believes that Boruto is working with Shikamaru, which is true, and also that he thinks they put him into a very dangerous position with the Shinju just so Boruto could save him to up his standing in the eyes of Kobu, which is also true. But in that case, it was the plan of Koji, not Boruto, so it's kinda halfway true, you know, just kinda almost there. But also, these elders are kinda crazy. They now believe that Boruto is working with the Shinju, you know, the Shinjus that he's going around defeating himself. Which is kind of funny because when I just said that out loud, it kind of connected in my brain why it made sense to them. Because it's kind of the same thing that just happened with Kobu, where Koji lured the Shinju towards him just so Boruto could kill them and save him and gain some, you know, points, some standing in the eyes of Kobu. It would be the same situation if Boruto was to lead the Shinju to the village just so he could kill them and get praised for saving the village. So the tactic is very similar, even though it's not really true because that's not what's happening at all, but I can see the logic there. But yeah, all Kobu wants to do is just remove Shikamaru from office, and he already has requested the power to do so from the daimyo, and it seems like he's going to get it. So whenever he gets the evidence that Shikamaru did work with Boruto or released him from confinement, he can just dismiss him from his position. So we'll see what happens there. It's very interesting. With that said, that is it for the video and the chapter. If you liked it, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and also consider becoming a member if you want to, I guess. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.